Hey guys, well it seems as though there is drama currently going on Twitter. There's a lot of outrage right now, it's a big fight, it's Tucker Carlson versus Ben Shapiro. Tucker said something about Ben, he made a point, essentially questioning Ben Shapiro and others, who seem to devote so much time to foreign conflict. Meanwhile, domestic crises continue to go on ignored. He didn't name Ben Shapiro specifically, but heavily implied that he was speaking specifically about Ben Shapiro. The internet's now going nuts, Ben Shapiro fans are now boycotting Tucker Carlson, they're dropping him, and then of course vice versa. I think the infighting is a little bit extreme here, although obviously I understand exactly why it's happening. We got two big names, I guess, pitted against each other. That tends to be the focus. People are taking Team Tucker and Team Ben. I'd rather talk about the actual concepts themselves. I want to have a discussion about this one because I think it's quite important. So let's try to stick to the ideas themselves. I'm going to show you what Tucker said. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. All right, folks, so here's the clip that started an absolute storm on Twitter.
So I don't really care, but I did think it showed like the level of not just corruption, which I knew, but of like emotional instability and craziness. I mean, there are people, and I stopped reading any of it, but there are people on the right who have spent the last 2 months every single day focused on a conflict in a foreign country as our own country becomes dangerously unstable on the brink of financial collapse with tens of millions of people who shouldn't be here in the country. We don't know their identities or the purpose of their being here. Like stuff that's could destroy the country for real and make it impossible for my kids to live here. They've said nothing about that, and they're focused with laser intensity on foreign conflicts. And I'm like, at some point, I've got 4 kids. If I'm so caught up in the problems of my neighbor's children and completely ignoring my own children as they get addicted to drugs and themselves, you know, I'm not against helping my neighbor's kids, but clearly I don't love my kids. I mean,
right.
that's the only logical conclusion, and they don't care about the country at all. And that's kind of their prerogative, but I do. Because I have no choice, because I'm from here, my family's been here hundreds of years, I plan to stay here. Like, I'm shocked by how little they care about the country, and including the person you mentioned. And I can't imagine how someone like that could get an audience of people who claim to care about America, because he doesn't, obviously. Right?
And the specific quote that caused all the drama was, "I'm shocked how little they care about the country, including the person you mentioned, and I can't imagine how someone like that could get an audience of people who claim to care about America because he doesn't, obviously." The implication is that Ben Shapiro does not care about America. Now, of course, I've defended Tucker Carlson a lot, but to be completely honest, I think in this case, Tucker probably could have played it a little bit better. I think the implication that Ben Shapiro doesn't care about America is a little bit of a stretch. I mean, he obviously does, and it seems as though he's dedicated most of his life to pushing American conservative values, especially targeting young people on college campuses. Maybe Tucker's statement was a little bit harsh, and obviously that's causing a little bit of a stir here. You know, I don't actually think that Tucker thinks that Ben Shapiro doesn't care about America. I mean, obviously he's raising a family here. You know, Tucker could have been a little bit more specific and a little bit more careful with the choice of words. That's for sure. At the end of the day, the actual essence of his argument, I think, carries some validity. You know, everybody wants to make this whole thing about Ben Shapiro, Tucker, Ben Shapiro, but Tucker was talking about the concept at large. Essentially what he was saying, or what he was advocating for, was America First philosophy. What he's saying is, every time you turn on the TV, or every time you're tuning into a lot of these big networks, there's always such an urgency and importance, such an emphasis on foreign conflict and foreign suffering, but suffering voices at home seem to fall on deaf ears. You know, that's the frustrating part about politics and the public conversation, is the cult of personality element. You know, there's Trump people, then there's the DeSantis people, there's Tucker people, Ben people, Tim Pool people, Biden people, as shocking and confusing as that is, but you get what I mean. It's always this emphasis on characters, it's always a freaking boxing match. But you know what gets lost in that is the actual important concepts. You know, I could have very easily opened up my computer here, clicked the record button, and just doubled down on the whole Tucker point, accusing Ben Shapiro of not caring for America, he's an Israel shill, but I don't understand the point of that. I would rather talk about what's important, the point at large, and that's what Tucker is saying. What Tucker is saying is that over 100,000 American citizens are dying every year from fentanyl overdoses. We are talking about the destruction of the American working class, There's a level of hopelessness amongst particular American demographics that's so saddening to see. It feels like the death of the American dream. It feels like the ending of an empire. Domestically, we face serious issues. But over the last 30 years, the media has done nothing but talk about Israel and Ukraine. I mean, just look at government spending, for instance. There are so many problems. The southern border is one of them, but it's impossible to get politicians to do anything about these problems. Meanwhile, when it comes to funding Ukraine, in less than 24 hours, through bipartisan consensus, politicians in Washington are willing to mobilize hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars, to be shipped directly to the proxy war effort. That is the issue. And to be honest, I feel like it's a pretty bipartisan issue in a way. Leftoids love to talk about the military budget. We need to reduce Pentagon spending so we could have all of these social programs. Okay, well, I mean, that's essentially what we're talking about. What we're saying is, maybe let's not put all of this emphasis on foreign conflicts and foreign issues. Maybe let's not ship over billions upon billions of dollars to be funding war efforts abroad. Maybe let's take care of our own people. That's exactly what Tucker is saying. Tucker is essentially saying what Democrat socialists are talking about, except he's not saying, well, let's just take all that money and, create communism. Of course, there's a little bit of a distinction there, but the core of the point remains that there seems to be some warped perspective or a warped priority list where foreign issues take priority over the suffering of actual American citizens, the ones who are paying taxes into the system. And obviously that can't be right. Catherine Herridge said this just the other day during a news segment. I forget what the network is. Maybe it was CBS. She works for CBS, but obviously she does the media round as well. Anyways, I'll play the clip.
I just feel like we can't do enough reporting on our service members, especially those who are struggling to get services, who feel that their claims have been wrongly denied. Frankly, I feel that there are times when the Defense Department and the VA is not erring on the side of the veteran. And I think after 20 years of war, the global war on terror, so many are retiring with complex physical and emotional demands, and we are simply not doing enough, and we need to do more reporting and have more accountability.
It's exactly that. Military veterans, American heroes, are being shafted on a daily basis. And we're talking about Israel and Ukraine and whatever other country. The priorities are warped. Not to mention, the implication is that we have to continue to get involved in other people's problems, as if it's America's duty to the world, yet getting involved in other people's problems has simply made things more complicated, and arguably in some regions more dangerous, over the past decades of American interventionist foreign policy strategies. Maybe it's time to rethink the philosophy. That's what I got from the Tucker clip. Maybe it's time to focus domestically on what the American people need as a top priority before anything else. And so, my takeaway here is that that's a real issue. It's a real concern that I think is really important to a lot of people. It may even be a bipartisan concern. And that's really what I'd like the conversation to be about, rather than the drama that's currently going on Twitter. Maybe let's get our own house in order before we start telling other people how to keep an orderly house. Maybe let's prioritize and emphasize on our children who need us and not the neighbor's children. And from that perspective, I'm fully on board with Tucker. I think Israel and Ukraine are both massive distractions. I think we should be doing the best that we can to mediate a lot of these situations diplomatically, but the idea that we should be plundering American wealth to fight somebody else's conflict, it just doesn't make sense to me. And we've seen in relatively recent history that getting involved in all of these conflicts hasn't exactly made the world a better, more peaceful place. All we do is generate more conflict and create more enemies. I'm tired of fighting fights, and I'm especially tired of fighting fights on behalf of other people when we should be fighting for our people. That's it. That's what's on my mind. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.